how do I support my child to learn about and regulate their emotions and behaviors? How can I be the best co-regulator for my child? Strategies to help them with self-regulation. So we did learning objective number one, which is understanding a little bit of the comorbidity to ASD, the language, so social interaction, communication, selective interest, repetition, um, and it's kind of rigid thinking, right? And sensory integration. So uh, let's start with the first direction in the Calm Compass called connect. There are 3 strategies in connect, and we're going to start with regulate. It is kind of the most urgent for a lot of parents and teachers and other students. I mean, but when kids are in self-regulated state, it's magical, right? As this picture demonstrates. So it's when they're not, right? But I'm gonna encourage you to look at when they're in this time is the time to be thinking and helping them, what they're doing right now, not in their dysregulated state. Why is dysregulation so difficult for kids with ASD? Well, it kind of goes back to understanding to action. We know that and understand that their emotional disequilibrium and dysregulation is common. And why is it common? For many, many, many reasons. The selective interest. Sometimes I'll do a quick little exercise with a child when we talk about the word surprise. I said, does that feel like a surprise when people ask you to do something without giving you a lot of time to do it? And I said, do this thing, put your hand over one eye, put this in, and imagine that this might extend out like a paper towel roll or something. And now imagine walking around looking through a paper towel roll. Basically, a narrow perspective, a narrow way of seeing. How safe do we kind of feel about that? We don't. And so, if something comes right before us and flashes before us, we're like, whoa, wait, what was that? They might not have a way of just removing that challenge. That's kind of a permanent thing for them. So, it includes the frequent personal threat of danger and safety. Um, not shared by others, and that was from Dr. Porges. I look forward to hearing him and others talk at the World Autism Summit next week as well, or during our time. So why regulate? And then we just add ASD, difficulty understanding, communicating feelings and emotions, difficulty with mind blindness, and so on. So really, it kind of boils down to, this picture is just perfect. Am I safe here? Comes long before what can I learn here? So if I'm not safe, it's really hard for me to learn. So we want to get their brain online, calm, regulated, ready to learn, ready to be social. I mean, learn socially, learn, you know.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you
Yeah,
deal?
Karen, yeah.
Can you hear
Chime
me?
in here. Yeah. Yep, I can hear you. I'm encouraged. Yeah.
Yes.
Ask
Okay.
it.
Sorry about that. Now, I wanted to comment that it's very good that it's very easy to understand. I also want to know, how do you deal with non-speaking individuals? Is
Right.
it
A
easy?
lot of these strategies are visual. So for non-speaking, they respond to our nonverbal just as well. I mean, sometimes speaking to them is the worst strategy we have, using language with them. Now, I mean, that said, we're teaching them language, but we're also teaching them communication. Communication is verbal and nonverbal. So non-speaking is nonverbal. And so we need to understand what their nonverbal cues and strategies are.
That's
In
very
my practice, my most familiar work is with verbal, but even verbal people with high IQ um, pick up on nonverbal, high-end nonverbal communication,
yeah, for
right?
sure. That's for sure. That is for sure. A lot of sign language and a lot of gestures.
Yeah, things we don't even know what we're saying or communicating. I mean, I'll have kids, and I love this because they feed me like very blunt information about how I'm sitting in a chair or my facial expression or Mitch, you're kind of bald. You're kind of shiny up top. And I'm like, oh, dudes, should I just, you know, I am, you're right. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're very blunt about such things so that they can focus. And I just really want to encourage kids to be blunt. Now I might help them in a social skill. Hey,
Mhm.
the social skill for that is this. So kind of getting back to some skill strategies for them. But they're reading nonverbal stuff all the time. Um,
Do you think that older kids are difficult or different in the way that you handle them as opposed to younger kids?
Um, Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes older kids need social skills as much or more as younger kids. They're just this that it might be more contextual. So the context is in either a work environment or um, uh, a family, a roommate,
Mhm.
college, university roommate experience, a cohabitating with other people, kind of an adult version of that child living in their own home. How do you respond to when your housemate says, dude, do those dishes, man? What the heck's going on with you? You know, and that could be heard by that young adult person, or that adult person is, you know, stop yelling at me and get dysregulated. And pretty soon the housemates are kind of against them, and they're, and so it's all about helping them in their situation.
Right.
Uh, so these strategies in general for young people and older, older kids and older people must be proactive, not reactive. We just don't do well with reactive. Do we need to keep people safe in a 911 situation? Of course we do. So we're going to react to dangerous or safety, security situations. But it, what we can do to avoid that and prevent that is really where my strategies lie. Um, and even actually helping people, first responders, in reactive 911 situations
But
and
they have
helping
to,
them with
sorry, they have to be taught the skills ahead of time so that it is not a
exactly,
reactive state, but a proactive state. Learn the tools.
exactly,
Getting a
exactly,
child out of a dangerous situation by using a slinky. I've heard that being used. It's a very effective way. And to teach the firefighters and to teach all the first responders what ways you can engage with children. That is not the
right,
typical way.
yeah,
So you have to do
right,
things different
yeah,
because they don't
absolutely,
change.
right, right, right.
Anyway,
One of my favorite parts about this, and I'll move the slide here, is co-regulator. And many people have heard this before. I heard the term from a colleague of mine, Ann Garrity, here in Minnesota. But co-regulator is just a fantastic term for me. It's like you being the adult, the caregiver, the teacher, educator, staff person with that child. You are helping them regulate. So imagine yourself as I'm not telling them to regulate. I am assisting in such a relational and strategic way. I'm a part of their regulation. I am not this, you know, obedient training, regulate, directive, authoritarian approach. This is very co-engaged, which is why Connect is all about the relationship matters. It's using your relationship as a person of trust and care and responsibility to be there for that child and not be dysregulated yourself. Do we get dysregulated as caregivers and providers? Absolutely. Um, and so we just have strategies to do that. So if you're in a dysregulated state and you're trying to help a child who's dysregulated, tap out, ask for help, right? You are probably not in a good spot. And that should really be like a mantra in schools and other places. Like, I need to tap out. And that really should be acceptable and understood and even planned for. Talking about prevention and preventative strategies. If you're working with a child in a school clinic setting and you need to, now we don't always get that opportunity. I understand. It's not all the time. Uh, but if that is if we can plan for that, um, then we are not in a space, and we need to take a few minutes to get back into that co-regulator kind of place, because we just aren't helping. Yeah.
that's very helpful.
Um, okay. So one of the biggest strategies that I want to help people understand is changing the way we talk about feelings and emotions. As a clinical social worker, one of the biggest, one of the things I went to therapy school for is really to help people move those feelings and emotions. And back in the day, it was talking about and identifying every single feeling and emotion sort of possible. There were feeling wheels with 10, 20, 30, 50 different words that were in these categories. And a little bit dizzying if you look back and look at these feeling wheels. I mean, some kids can't organize them that way. Many can't, and many with ASD have alexithymic kind of response to that, which is, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know how to say the words I'm feeling. And so over the years, I've just really focused on finding the place of distress and eustress. So eustress is positive stress. And I just sort of talk about that with kids as saying, hey, when we're not in distress, we're in eustress sometimes. We're feeling good about things, but we're probably just floating back and forth most of the day. A little bit of distress, a little bit of eustress. Um, this presentation for me was a little bit of both. Like, I hope I'm going to do okay, but I'm excited to talk about this stuff, but I hope I'm going to do okay. So we kind of move back and forth in those states, and without getting too dysregulated. So I'm really wanting to help other people. I mean, I do it in my one office setting, one family at a time. And I would love to, spread this message that using words like stress can help people understand emotions in a different way. Um, so the definition of stress is any negative thoughts or feelings about myself or others. In this slide, there's the definition right there. So that is really what we're based on. So we don't have to ask kids. We don't have to say to them, "Hey, what feeling are you? Look angry." Well, what if they're not angry? What if they don't know what they're feeling? What if they're nervous, but they're mad that they're nervous? What if they're embarrassed? What if there are 1,000 feelings and you want a word? Ain't gonna happen. So sometimes our best efforts do cause more distress. So what we need to do is to kind of work on helping them identify, how bad do you feel? Maybe, I mean, if we get to a point, we can certainly say, how do you feel? But sometimes it's just how bad you feel. I have to just plug, I guess, Inside Out and Inside Out 2. They have really done, I think, a good service of visualizing our emotions, right? I don't know if you've seen either of those, Karen, but Inside Out and Inside Out 2 have really put um, animation, and a voice to all these different feelings uh, and beliefs, which is where some of the more intensive sorts of feelings come from, is those negative beliefs as we get older. So what additional strategies and activities for self-regulation can you think of? So when we think of self-regulation strategies, we're thinking of um, and for every child, there's many things. So we really want to start with, what is the what's in their interest, what is in their wheelhouse, what helps with sensory integration. We know that sensory integration is the probably an instigator for a lot of people, but if we don't know to ask about it, understanding to action, if we don't know that sensory integration can be a trigger, we won't come up with strategies and to help them with that. So let's provide. So the predictive course here is to provide self-regulation strategies, rehearse self-regulation strategies, swinging, jumping, human burritos. You know what I'm talking about. Those of you out there who have done little human burritos with your children for that proprioceptive sensory integration. Um, brushing. Um, and sometimes it's singing loudly in your room with headphones, and everyone else in the house is like, oh my gosh, well, somebody needs self-regulation. The best visual for me about self-regulation is in the movie, I think, Temple Grandin. So the motion picture Temple Grandin with Claire Danes, where she created something to help herself feel better, the squeeze machine. So we don't need to do that. We don't need to go out and make a squeeze machine, but we know self-regulation is a trigger for dysregulated states and stress. So in the stress book, there are lots of strategies how to help out. Many of those I use kind of every single day here in my practice and working with families. So think of some self-regulation strategies you can think of for your child that they can kind of practice every day. Um, and little ones, it's sometimes not a fidget. Sometimes fidgets can be dysregulating. So we really need to know and understand from the child, is that a strategy? All right, let's talk about positive